Happy Saturday. It's Kim again. I know you haven't had enough of me already. I'm here to talk to you guys today about protein and how protein can affect your athlete and what you can do to help your athlete get the right amount and enough protein. All right, so why protein? Why protein? What's the point? Why would you want to make sure that your teen athlete has enough protein? Well, here's why. Because your teen athlete needs muscle, and in order to build muscle, you actually need protein. So you can you can exercise and not eat protein, but your kid is going to have a lot of trouble building muscle if they're not eating enough protein. So the next question is how much protein? Okay, so the RDA for kids 9 to 13 that are athletes is about 46 grams for girls per day and 52 for boys. The other way you can do it is an athlete needs to have about 0.8 grams per pound of body weight. So if you have, listen to this, so if you have a 100-pound kiddo, then they're going to need 80 grams of protein a day. So that's two different pieces of information, and you can look at it either way. I think the minimum would be that 52, and that's 9 to 13. So as your student athlete gets over the age of 13 and starts to weigh more, you're really going to have to use this other calculation, which is 0.8 grams per pound of body weight. Okay, so again, that's a 100-pound kiddo would need about 80 grams of protein if they're in an athletic season. Now, when they're not in an athletic season, let's say they're having an off season, and I know my son, when he has his off season, he actually works out in a different way, not as hard as he does, I guess. It doesn't go as hard and it's not as intense as he does during the full season, but he lifts a lot of weights in the off season. And so I keep him at that 0.8 grams per pound. But if they're not super active, you can drop them down to 0.4 to 0.5 grams per pound. So that would be a 100-pound kiddo would need somewhere between 40 and 50 grams of protein per day over the age of 13. Again, let me clarify, the 9 to 13 age group, for boys it's 40, or girls it's 46 grams, for boys it's 52. And then use that calculation over the age of 13. Hope that makes sense. So that's how much, okay? And why would you decrease the amount of protein if they're in a non-competitive athletic season? Here's why. Because too much protein can actually tax your kidneys. So you don't want to be over-proteining your kids when they're not having the fitness level, the exercise level to actually utilize that protein in their muscles, because then it just gets processed through the kidneys and it can actually cause some pretty serious kidney problems. Here's an example. My mom decided, without telling me, this is a long time ago, it's probably 6 or 7 years ago, she told me one day, she said, my kidney function tests it was liver actually, but she said her kidney function tests were high and so were her liver function tests. And I was like, well, that's weird. Why would that be the case? Because we had actually gotten her off statins and stuff. And so she went to the doctor and he said, well, and I actually asked her, I said, what are you eating? And she's like, oh, this, and then she told me what she ate, of course, over the course of the day. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're eating like 110 grams of protein a day. I said, that's not good for your body. And she's like, oh, well, it's kind of like, South Beach, which is all protein and fat. Mostly it's kind of like modified Atkins. And I said, no, you don't need that amount of protein because you're not a bodybuilder. Now, the woman works out like a fiend. But again, she's not a bodybuilder, so her body is not going to be muscles are not going to be able to use all that protein. So it ended up getting processed through her liver and kidneys, which actually caused a huge problem. It took about 9 months to get her numbers back down of taking her off that high protein diet, bringing her back down to a normal level. So trust me when I say too much protein can be a bad thing. So when your kids are not in serious competitive athletics, you can drop them down to that 0.4 to 0.5 grams per pound calculation. Okay, so what are some really good sources of protein? Of course, there's dairy, there's milk, yogurt, eggs. Eggs are a great source of protein. You have to eat the whole egg to get all the protein. Although a lot of the protein is in the white, the yellow has all of the awesome micronutrients in it. Beans, of course, nut butters, chicken, fish, beef, the whole animal protein route. Those, and then of course tofu, quinoa, if you've got a vegetarian. Now, I'm going to get on my high horse for just a second and talk about organic protein. I think it's really important, especially if your protein comes from a dairy source and you don't know a lot about the company that's producing it, okay? And I'm going to tell you why about that in a second. So we're always concerned about hormones and we're concerned about pesticides and all that. Well, guess where the hormones and the pesticides and the antibiotics are stored in animals? It's their fat. And guess where their fat is? Mostly within their muscle and stuff. So when you're eating protein and you see the white lines that go through it, the fat content that's in it, if there's junk in it, so we're talking about pesticides and antibiotics and hormones, those are all going to reside in the fat, right? And protein does have fat in it. It's not a bad thing. We like fat. Remember, we talked about that yesterday. We like fat. But you need to look for organic protein sources, okay? Especially the ones that have fat in them. So dairy, all animal protein sources, they need to be organic, you guys, because otherwise you're going to be pumping your kid with pesticides, hormones, and antibiotics that they don't need. And I think sometimes you can look around and you can find natural meats. Just make sure that when you read the label on them, make sure it says free of pesticides, hormones, antibiotics. And then it's fine, because you have to be real careful about that. That's one of the reasons why I think our kids are changing so much. Like, we didn't develop as quickly as our kids are now because they're inadvertently being fed hormones that disrupt their normal hormone cycle. So we've got to be careful with that. So I will now get off my high horse. Actually, just got off my high horse. Literally, it just came from the barn. I was riding my horse. But I will get off that high horse for a little bit and just encourage you to really, it's so easy to find now. You can find it at any grocery store is going to carry their own, even their store brand. I think no, it's not Natural Choice. What's it called? Simple Choice is the one at our grocery store, and I think that's across the United States. I think they're Safeways, maybe? I don't know. I'm not really sure. No, that's O Organics. Might be the Kroger's. And I've been in Publix, and I know they have their own brand of organic stuff, and that actually might be the Simple Choice. I can't remember. Simple Truth. That's what it is. Simple Truth. Anyway, they're less expensive than the brand name brands of organic protein. Now, what if you have a picky eater? What if you have a picky eater that runs 60 miles a week? That's problematic. Okay. My son, first year in cross country, I told you guys he ran in 8th grade, but their longest distance was 800 yards. So he goes in to run 5Ks, and in order to train for a 5K, they're really running like 5 miles, sometimes 8 miles a day, 6 days a week. So we're talking somewhere between 40 and 60 miles a week, depending on just their training schedule. And this kid is a super picky eater, especially with protein. He is happy to eat carbs, he's happy to eat sugar, he's happy to eat fat for that matter, but protein's tough. First year in cross country, he started cross country at 109 pounds, and he was 5'6", I think, which is skinny to begin with, and ended the season at 106. And I was not happy. I'm like, dude, you are the last person who needs to lose weight. Oh my gosh. And he had grown an inch. So now he was 5'7" and 106. I'm like, you are emaciated. We need to fatten you up. So we worked really hard over the off season to kind of have to force him to eat meat and protein. And a couple of the things that we found that worked really well are, one, we found beef jerkies and meat sticks at we just found them at Whole Foods, but you can find them other places, Amazon too, organic ones. And he was real happy to eat those, and they're nitrate free because the nitrates, those are actually cancer causers, so we don't want that. And we found those, and he ate those really well, and those have about 12 grams of protein per meat stick. So there we had that going for us. We were pretty happy about that. So we worked over the off season, and then I found the Beachbody Performance recovery formula, which has 22 grams of protein in it. It is is dairy based, which doesn't bother me, just because, again, I spoke to the guy who formulated the stuff and asked him about the organicness, because it's not organic. So I said, dude, what's up with this? He's like, Beachbody wouldn't let us put proteins that had been used from an animal that had been fed hormones, antibiotics, and all the bad stuff. And so they were grass-fed animals, so on and so forth. So it's good quality, even though it's not organic. It's still really good quality. So I felt good about that. So we've got him drinking that after he works out, which has been really helpful, I think, for him and also for his muscles. Something else that we do is we do minimally processed lunch meats. So Costco has an organic one there. Then when they're on sale at our grocery store, I'll buy organic turkey, or sliced chicken, or something like that. But he has to have protein at every single meal, including his snacks. So what we'll do is we do Cliff Bars, which we talked about yesterday, in the sugar area, but yummy because they taste good and they have good protein in them. I think 12 grams of protein, and it's all that one's all vegetarian, so not that it matters for him because he's a meat eater. But we also do so breakfast has some sort of protein in it, usually some sort of minimally processed sausage or organic bacon. We do that, and then lunch is a sandwich, but we have Cliff Bars in between. And then lunch is sandwich with lunch meat, organic. And then he has a pre-workout snack, which usually involves nut butters of some sort and some kind of carb, because that's my kid. So that's what he does. And then dinner always, if the kids have pasta, then he has a chicken and apple sausage in it. Or if they have a pizza, there's some sort of meat on it for him, because he needs that protein. And then every night he drinks his Recover, which has 22 grams of protein in it. It tastes like chocolate milk. Can't beat that with a stick. I also try to squeeze in protein in desserts. So a little sneaky, but not really. We'll do chocolate pudding that I make that's an organic mix that isn't junky, but it's a whole serving of milk, which is 8 grams of protein. And it's pudding, right? So what's not to like? So I try to squeeze that in too. So fast forward 1 year, we had cross-country season this past fall, and he started cross-country season another inch taller, so 5'8". He started cross-country at 109, and he ended at 111. So he gained weight over the season, and then just recently he hopped on the scale at school for fun in the weight room, and he was 112. So we're doing pretty good with our protein, I think, and it's all turning into muscle because the child still looks real thin, but he's got muscle, so it's good, and he's motivated to stay in shape really for his sailing season, and that's an interesting, very interesting thing with protein, because he's out on the water for 12 hours and I don't have access to him. Sometimes 8-12 hours during a regatta, and I can't get to him. I can't force feed him. I can't hand him something yummy to eat while he's out there. And it can't get wet because he's on a single-handed boat. So he is pretty much in the water all the time. So this is stuff that has to stay in his life jacket. So it's got to have plastic over it and so on and so forth. So those meat sticks have come in real handy. Again, they're 12 grams of protein per, and all good protein because they're organic. And he really likes them. So again, I think the thing is, and protein's tough, because how many meals can you feed a kid chicken before they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired of the chicken? So you're going to have to go out and find other sources and other things that your kids like, because we just want them to eat. So good luck with that. No, I'm just kidding. If you comment or ask questions about different protein sources, I can help you, but I think I've given you lots of ideas. Again, nut butters are big, big, big. If you can get your kid to eat peanut butter or almond butter or something like that, you have a win in your corner, because that is awesome micronutrients like magnesium and things like that. And chromium, I think, is another one that's in there. Selenium. There's some good stuff in nuts. Fat and protein. I mean, So it's a triple awesomeness. All right, you guys, have a fabulous Saturday. I hope this has helped. And if you have any questions, please feel free to post them. And don't forget to look in the files section of this group and see if you can find some fun recipes for you and your kids. Have a great day.